Welcome to the Remedify Coaching Program. Your health is your wealth. And, I want you to just imagine for a second that over the last year, you've listened to, I don't know, maybe 500 hours of self-improvement audio.
Oh, at least. Probably more for some people.
Right, exactly. Like, you've consumed thousands of tips, hacks, and strategies, and you felt incredibly inspired every single day.
Yeah, you get that rush?
You do. But then you wake up this morning, you take a hard look at your life, and you realize something kind of terrifying. Your bank account is exactly the same. Your stress levels are, honestly, they're actually worse, and you haven't moved an inch closer to your goals.
Absolutely nothing has changed.
Nothing. Zero.
Yeah.
And if that scenario hits a little too close to home for you, well, then this deep dive is completely custom tailored for your mindset today.
It really is. Because today we are looking at honestly, a very powerful manifesto on personal growth provided by the Remedify Coaching Program. And it's titled The Path to Practical Wisdom.
Yeah, and we are not just, summarizing a document today. We are exploring a really fundamental shift in how you operate in the world.
A total paradigm shift.
Exactly. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. If you are tired of wasting your time on these surface-level conversations that they give you the illusion of progress without the reality of growth, well, it is time to strip away the noise.
That is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today's goal is to really meticulously deconstruct why we get stuck in these exhausting cycles of what the source text calls empty motivation.
Empty motivation.
Yeah.
Such a great phrase.
Right. We are going to examine this modern architecture of stagnation. But, more importantly, we're going to unpack the actual mechanics of how to transition into a new state of being.
Yeah.
A state where, as the manifesto so beautifully puts it, learning needs action. Because, this isn't about giving you just more information to passively consume.
We have way too much of that already.
We really do. We live in a world that is just drowning in information.
Yeah.
So our objective today is to explore the actual blueprint for real, observable transformation in your daily life.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the very first thing the source text does is it hits you with this deeply challenging, almost, uncomfortable question.
It doesn't pull any punches.
It really doesn't. It asks, literally, are you tired of podcasts that waste your time with empty motivation, recycled advice, and surface-level conversations that never help you grow?
Yeah, it completely calls out the elephant in the room right there.
It really does. It notes that most people just consume entertainment all day long, and then, they sit around and wonder why their reality remains entirely stagnant.
It's a very harsh diagnosis.
It is harsh, but honestly, it feels incredibly necessary right now. We are treating information like it's a magic pill.
What's fascinating here is that specific surgical phrase they use, right?
Yep.
Empty motivation. It forces us to pause and deeply analyze what motivation actually is when it's just totally divorced from action. Like, why exactly is it empty?
Right, because it feels full in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels great. Let's look at the modern paradox we find ourselves in. We live in an era characterized by just this unprecedented volume of what the text refers to as confusion and noise.
Oh, so much noise everywhere you look.
Right. And if you want to, you can open a screen right now and instantly find, 10,000 different voices telling you how to live, how to hustle, how to find peace.
Got to fix your entire life in 3 easy steps, yeah.
Exactly. And here is where the psychological trap springs shut. When you listen to that advice, your brain actually experiences a neurochemical event.
Like a physical reaction.
Yes, a physical reaction. You get this huge rush of dopamine. And that dopamine spike, it tricks your central nervous system into feeling the exact same sense of accomplishment you would feel if you had actually done the work.
Oh, wow. Wait, really? So our brains literally can't tell the difference?
From a chemical reward standpoint, no, not really. You feel productive simply because you listen to someone else talk about being productive.
That is wild.
But functionally,
Yeah.
in the real world, you remain completely, physically, and circumstantially stagnant. It is this brilliant, devastating neurological trick that our modern media environment plays on us all day long.
Wow. So we're basically just biohacking ourselves into a state of total delusion.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, delusion.
The dopamine hit without the follow-through. I used to think of this as just eating cotton candy for the brain.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it tastes sweet for a second but gives you zero nutrition. But based on what you are saying about the nervous system, it's actually much more insidious than that.
Yeah,
It's like putting on a virtual reality headset and
Yeah.
getting on a VR treadmill.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. You feel like you are running a marathon through the Swiss Alps or something.
Yeah.
You are sweating, your heart rate is up, you feel the total exhaustion and the triumph of the runner's high.
You feel like a champion.
Exactly. But then you take the headset off and you are still just standing in your dusty basement. You haven't actually traveled a single mile.
You're exactly where you started.
You've expended all this emotional energy, but you have zero real-world momentum to show for it.
That VR treadmill analogy, it perfectly captures the exact mechanism of empty motivation. You're experiencing this simulation of growth, but not the reality of it.
Yeah.
And the Remedify text is pointing out that this isn't just a minor bad habit, It is a widespread societal illusion.
A cultural epidemic, almost.
Truly, when the text highlights that people consume entertainment all day and wonder why nothing changes, it's diagnosing a critical disconnect between input and outcome.
Right.
We have culturally been conditioned to expect that the mere input of passive entertainment,
Or even passive educational content.
even passive education,
Yeah.
we think it will somehow miraculously synthesize into the output of a better, more fulfilled life.
Like osmosis.
Right, like osmosis.
Yeah.
But the laws of human psychology, biology, and personal development, they absolutely do not work that way. The input must match the nature of the desired output.
Right.
If the input is just recycled, surface-level noise, the output will inevitably be a recycled, surface-level life.
Yeah.
Real action requires an entirely different kind of fuel.
Which brings up a really crucial distinction here, because the text doesn't just say, stop watching movies. It specifically calls out recycled advice and surface-level conversations.
Yes, very specifically.
It's implying that not all educational content is actually educational. A lot of it is just entertainment wearing a suit and tie.
Oh, definitely. Edutainment.
Right, it's the illusion of learning. So if we are finally willing to step off that VR treadmill, if we recognize that we are surrounded by all this noise and junk food media that just tricks our dopamine receptors.
Get out?
Yeah, how do we actually shift our diet? How do we transition to something that genuinely fuels real-world change? Because thankfully, the text doesn't just leave us drowning in the problem.
No, it offers a very clear way out.
Right. It introduces the Remedify Coaching Program as the antidote, and it lays out a very specific curriculum.
Exactly. The source material outlines the core pillars of the program, and the list is very, very deliberate.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so it's practical life strategies, wellness education, mindset development, personal growth lessons, business insights, and emotional healing discussions.
That covers a lot of ground.
It does. But the ultimate goal of all these pillars, the real destination they're driving toward, is the cultivation of what the text calls practical wisdom you can actually use.
Practical wisdom. I want to really zero in on that. Practical wisdom, because we hear the word wisdom all the time.
Right. Constantly.
And it's usually associated with some old philosopher sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop.
Right. Totally detached from the real world.
Exactly. But adding the word practical, that changes the entire frequency of the concept.
It changes everything. The operative word, the absolute key differentiator that separates the Remedify philosophy from the endless sea of noise, is practical. This is not esoteric theory. This is not some academic philosophy designed to be endlessly debated in a sterile classroom and then, promptly forgotten about.
No one has time for that.
No. Practical wisdom is knowledge forged specifically for the battlefield of your daily life. And if you look closely at that list of pillars you just mentioned, you'll see they are not isolated subjects.
Okay, how so?
They are deeply structurally interconnected. You cannot truly achieve emotional healing without undergoing rigorous mindset development.
That makes sense.
Right. Your emotional triggers, the things that cause you to lash out or shut down, they are entirely tethered to your underlying cognitive patterns. If you don't develop the mindset to actually recognize those patterns, all the emotional healing talk in the world, it's just empty theory.
That makes total sense. I mean, you can't separate the software of the mind from the hardware of your emotional responses. They are running on the exact same system.
Precisely. And furthermore, let's look at the business insights pillar.
Okay.
You cannot effectively apply business insights if you lack the practical life strategies to, say, manage your daily calendar.
Or just show up on time.
Exactly. Or if you lack the wellness education to maintain the sheer physical and mental stamina required to run a business or excel in your career.
Business takes a lot of physical energy.
It really does. The text is presenting an ecosystem of growth. If one pillar crumbles, the structural integrity of the others is immediately compromised.
So it's all tied together?
Yes. Practical wisdom is the mortar that holds these pillars together. It is the ability to take a high-level concept about emotional healing and physically use it to de-escalate a tense argument with your spouse in the kitchen on a Tuesday night.
Real-world application.
Exactly. It's taking a theoretical business insight and actually applying it to your financial ledger today and actually seeing the numbers change.
I love how the text frames this. It says, this is where learning meets action. It is such a powerful collision of two concepts that we usually just keep totally separated.
We really do.
And I want to ask you, the listener, right now, to really reflect on this with total honesty. How many times have you heard a truly great idea?
Probably hundreds of times.
Right. Maybe you were listening to an audiobook on a long drive or reading a blog post and you thought, wow, that is profound. That could actually change my life.
You get that little spark.
You get the spark, and then you did absolutely nothing with it.
Nothing at all.
You just let it evaporate into the ether. You went right back to your old routines the very next morning. This source material, it's holding a mirror up to us right now. It is challenging us to finally, permanently bridge that massive gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it.
It is arguably the most difficult gap to bridge in the entire human experience.
It really is.
The vast, empty space between the head and the hands. The Remedify approach insists that a deep dive like this one, or any educational tool you engage with, should never merely be background noise that plays while your life remains static.
It can't just be passive.
Right. It must be a catalyst. It must provoke a physical, observable change in your reality. If it doesn't translate into action, it just remains in the realm of that empty motivation we diagnosed earlier.
And speaking of provoking physical change, of really stepping off that VR treadmill and actually taking action in the real world, we are going to pause our analysis for just a moment.
Good idea.
Because we don't want this discussion to become just another hit of dopamine for you. We want you, the listener, to take a concrete step toward that practical wisdom right now.
Step 1.
Exactly. Visit the podcast series, Remedify Coaching Program, for more exciting episodes. Also, do not forget to check the episode description for more resources that can help you grow in your spirit, mind, and body.
Taking that kind of immediate physical action, that is exactly the transition we were discussing.
It is.
It's moving from being a passive consumer of information to an active participant in your own development.
Absolutely. And there is more. Also, do not forget to join our free school community. Your transformation starts with what you listen to consistently. Join our community 24Hers 7 days a week. Learn and grow FB.
It's such a great resource.
It really is. You can find it by going to https://www.school.com/tyrannus-hall-bible-college/about. Check out our plans at that same address. Just change about to plans.
Right.
And enjoy the podcast 24Hers 7 days a week at https://rss.com/podcast/remedify-coaching-program-stay-freshes. And finally, great news. You can now join our sales affiliate program.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is. It is easy to create product links, promote our products on all social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, etc. The commission is 25% for every product sold. Make some money today. Here is the link. https://www.pnmoneymaking.com/affiliate-signup. We have laid out the tools, and now it is totally up to you to pick them up.
And picking up those tools, whether it's, joining a community of like-minded individuals or engaging in the affiliate program, that is the literal manifestation of bridging the gap.
Putting the hands to work.
Exactly. It forces you out of isolation and into an environment of actual accountability and practical application.
Exactly. So now that we understand what we need to learn, this deeply interconnected ecosystem of practical wisdom, and we know how to start taking action, we really need to look at who this process actually turns us into.
The end result.
Right. Because the Remedify text makes a very bold, very specific promise about the end result of this transformation.
It makes an incredibly comprehensive promise, actually. The source explicitly states that the program is designed to make you sharper, healthier, more disciplined, and more purposeful.
Those are strong words.
Very strong. And it claims this specific sequence of traits will help you move forward in 5 distinct arenas: spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we were really looking at is a holistic 360-degree approach to the entire human operating system.
The whole machine.
Exactly. It completely, fundamentally rejects the modern societal tendency toward compartmentalization.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate for a second here because I want to really test the structural integrity of this idea.
Sure, go for it.
A lot of listeners might hear that list: spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, financial, and they might just feel incredibly overwhelmed.
It sounds like a lot of work.
Right. They might say, look, I am working 60 hours a week just trying to secure my financial pillar. I literally do not have the time or energy to sit on a cushion and meditate for my spiritual pillar or hit the gym for 2 hours for my physical pillar.
Very common feeling.
Doesn't this 360-degree approach just set people up for massive, spectacular burnout? I mean, isn't it safer to just compartmentalize and focus on one thing at a time?
That is the exact trap of modern compartmentalization, and honestly, it is a brilliant question to unpack. Society actively encourages us to segment our lives.
We're told to find a work-life balance, right? Like they're two different things.
Exactly. We are told to develop a ruthless work self, where we focus exclusively on finances.
Yeah.
Then we have a separate gym self, where we, brutalize ourselves for physical gain.
And a weekend self.
Right, maybe we have a Sunday self for the spiritual aspect.
Yeah.
But the Remedify philosophy, which is backed by basic human biology and psychology, it argues that you are not a collection of separate avatars.
You're just one person.
You are a singular, intricately integrated entity. You cannot be razor sharp financially, but completely bankrupt physically and spiritually without eventually facing a catastrophic systemic collapse.
It's going to catch up with you.
Always. To answer your question about burnout, trying to maintain 5 separate disconnected lives, that is actually what causes burnout.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Right. The Remedify approach isn't about adding 50 new tasks to your to-do list. It's about recognizing that these pillars naturally feed each other.
Give me an example.
Okay, think of a highly successful entrepreneur who ruthlessly compartmentalizes. They ignore their physical wellness, and they just brush off emotional healing as, soft.
Right. They're too busy grinding.
Exactly. They might build a massive portfolio of business insights and financial wealth, but eventually the biology collects its debt.
Always does.
Their body gives out due to chronic stress,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe their relationships disintegrate because they totally lack emotional regulation. The text asserts that true sustainable growth must occur across all 5 fronts because they're all sharing the exact same biological and psychological engine.
That is a really fascinating way to frame it. You aren't managing 5 different engines. You are maintaining one engine that drives 5 different wheels.
Exactly.
And if one wheel falls off, the whole car crashes, no matter how good the engine is.
You end up in the ditch either way.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Let's look at the specific sequence of those 4 adjectives the text uses to describe the transformation you undergo when you maintain that engine properly.
Okay, yeah.
It says the program is designed to make you sharper, healthier, more disciplined, and more purposeful. Now, when I first read that, it honestly just looked like a nice list of positive buzzwords.
Just marketing copy.
Right. But the more I sit with it, the more I realize there is a distinct, logical, and even biological progression there. It is a very deliberate chain of events.
It really is. Let's break down that chain. The text starts with becoming sharper.
Right. Sharpness. In the context of a world filled with confusion and noise, sharpness is cognitive clarity.
It's seeing through the fog.
Yes, it is the ability to distinguish the signal from the noise. When your mind is dull, you just react to everything. You get outraged by every single news headline, you get distracted by every phone notification, you get emotionally derailed by every minor inconvenience.
You're just at the mercy of your environment.
Exactly. But when you are sharp, you have a filter. You wake up and you can see the board clearly. You know what actually matters and what is just a pure distraction.
Exactly. Sharpness is cognitive efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And notice what happens next in the text's progression. When you possess that sharpness, that clarity of thought, it naturally dictates the quality of your decisions.
Oh, right.
You stop choosing the path of least resistance. You stop choosing the junk food, the toxic argument, the financial impulse buy, because your newly sharp mind recognizes the long-term cost of those short-term comforts.
You see the consequences clearly.
Yes. This improved decision-making naturally makes you healthier. Sharpness dictates the choice, and health is the inevitable biological and psychological result of making the right choice over and over again.
Yes. But then we hit the hardest part, don't we?
We always do.
You make the sharp choice, you start getting healthier physically, mentally, financially, but then the initial excitement wears off.
The honeymoon phase ends.
The dopamine of starting a new routine totally fades. That is why the third word is so critical here. Discipline.
Yes. Discipline.
You cannot maintain that health without being more disciplined. Discipline is the bridge between the motivation fading and the actual habit forming.
It's the glue.
It's the ability to keep making those sharp, healthy choices day in and day out, especially when you are tired, and especially when the world is throwing all that noise at you.
And when you stack those three traits, right, when you use cognitive sharpness to make healthy decisions, and you apply discipline to sustain them over a long period of time, what is the inevitable outcome?
The text gives us the capstone. You become more purposeful.
Exactly. Purpose isn't something you just stumble upon while walking down the street one day.
It's not a lottery ticket.
No, it isn't magically granted to you. Purpose is the structural capstone that can only rest securely on the pillars of clarity, health, and discipline. The text is providing a literal, step-by-step formula for generating a life of meaning.
That progression is incredible. Sharpness leads to health. Health requires discipline. And discipline forged over time creates purpose. It really is a formula.
A very robust one.
So let's ground this. Let's take this high-level philosophy and drag it right down into the mud of daily life. Let's look closely at those 5 domains of forward movement. The text lists again. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially.
Okay.
Let's create a hypothetical scenario to really illustrate how this 360-degree integration works, or, how it fails.
I think exploring a negative domino effect first is actually the best way to understand the necessity of the positive domino effect.
Yeah, let's look at the breakdown.
Let's look at the intersection of the physical pillar and the financial pillar.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we have someone who entirely lacks discipline in their physical wellness. They are perpetually exhausted, they are consuming a terrible diet, and they are chronically sleep deprived.
Sounds like most modern workers, honestly.
Sad, but true. Now, this isn't just about fitting into a pair of jeans, right? This is about cellular biology. That physical state directly degrades their mental pillar.
Right, because the brain is an organ?
Exactly. Sleep deprivation physically impairs the prefrontal cortex, which is the exact part of the brain responsible for executive function, planning, and impulse control.
So they are literally losing their sharpness.
Exactly. The physical neglect literally destroys the mental sharpness. Now, because their cognitive function is impaired, they lack the capacity for emotional regulation.
The next domino falls.
The emotional pillar collapses. They become reactive, irritable, and completely unable to handle the normal stress of a workday.
And then what happens?
And finally, because they cannot handle stress emotionally, they snap at a client, or they make reactive, poorly planned decisions in their business, or they just totally fail to execute on a major project. This directly negatively impacts their financial pillar.
Wow.
Do you see how physical neglect at the very bottom of the chain resulted in a massive financial penalty at the top?
It is a complete cascading failure. A negative domino effect where the physical destroys the mental, which destabilizes the emotional, which bankrupts the financial. And if we look at the spiritual pillar, which the text importantly includes, if your life is just this chaotic mess of poor decisions and stress, you have zero bandwidth to connect with any higher meaning or overarching purpose.
You're in survival mode.
You are just surviving. But the Remedify program proposes the exact opposite. A positive upward spiral.
Right.
By feeding your mind with practical life strategies and wellness education concurrently, you elevate the physical state. You start sleeping better and managing your energy.
And that changes everything.
It does. This physical vitality physically repairs the prefrontal cortex, which sharpens the mental state. With the sharp mind, you can finally utilize the program's emotional healing discussions to stabilize your emotional responses.
You're not just reacting anymore.
Exactly. You no longer react, you respond. And with stable emotions and a sharp mind, you can finally execute on those business insights, which obviously secures the financial state.
That builds on itself.
And encompassing all of this is the spiritual pillar. That deep, quiet sense of overarching meaning and connection that fuels the entire engine. The text is offering a highly practical blueprint for becoming structurally sound in every single dimension of your existence.
It is a vision for a totally integrated, unshakable life.
Which honestly sounds amazing. It sounds like the ultimate goal. But again, I want to be the voice of the listener who might be, driving to work right now feeling completely overwhelmed by all of this.
It's a tall order.
It is. If someone is currently stuck in the noise, if they're currently trapped in that negative domino effect we just talked about, building this 360-degree, five-pillar life might sound like trying to scale Mount Everest without oxygen.
Right, it sounds monumental, impossible even.
But the beauty of this source material is that it doesn't just show you the top of the mountain and, wish you luck. It provides the exact specific mechanism for how to take the very first step.
The foundational habit.
Yes. And it brings us to what I want to call the architecture of consistency. The text talks about feeding your mind 24/7.
Yes, this is perhaps the most actionable, ground-level strategy in the entire document. The text explicitly emphasizes that you can feed your mind with valuable things while driving, working out, resting, studying, working, traveling, or even just relaxing at home.
It covers everything.
It lists all these incredibly mundane, everyday activities, and then it delivers the overarching philosophy, the true thesis statement of this entire manifesto.
I know exactly what line you're going to say.
Your transformation starts with what you listen to consistently.
So what does this all mean in a practical sense? Because intentionally listing out all those specific daily activities, driving, resting, traveling, folding laundry, it doesn't feel accidental. It feels like a very targeted strategy.
It is a profoundly intentional strategy. The text is tapping into the actual psychology of routine and the mechanics of habit formation. It is revealing a method to systematically overwrite the confusion and noise of the world by hacking your passive time.
Hacking your passive time. I like that.
Think about the average day. We all have hours and hours where our physical bodies are occupied, but our cognitive bandwidth is totally unused.
The commute.
The morning commute, the 45 minutes on the elliptical, walking the dog, doing the dishes. Typically, what do people do with that passive time?
They fill it with the noise.
Exactly.
They turn on a cynical news broadcast that just makes them angry, or they mindlessly scroll through social media, or if it's totally silent, they just let their own internal anxieties and negative self-talk run wild.
Precisely. They allow the default programming of the world to just run in the background. But by explicitly listing these mundane activities, the Remedify source is teaching you how to leverage that passive time.
Right.
It's teaching you how to build an active, resilient mindset during the hours you previously considered wasted. You are essentially installing a new operating system that runs in the background of your life.
But that is a phenomenal way to think about it. It's like background processing on a computer.
Yes, exactly like that.
If your computer has a bunch of malware running in the background, which is the equivalent of cynical news, surface-level entertainment, or toxic internal monologue, it drains your battery.
And it slows everything down.
Your fan is spinning, the machine is hot, and when you actually try to open a program to do some real work, the computer just freezes because the CPU is maxed out by the background garbage. You have literally no cognitive bandwidth left for practical wisdom.
That is a highly accurate technological metaphor for human cognitive load.
Yeah.
When you are constantly processing noise, you experience decision fatigue and cognitive depletion before you even start your workday.
Right. So the Remedify strategy is telling us to uninstall the malware and install a completely new background process. By listening to wellness education while driving or, emotional healing discussions while working out, you are running a positive, constructive program in the background.
You're feeding the system.
You are continuously charging the battery instead of draining it. You are fundamentally changing the internal environment of your mind.
And this raises an absolutely critical question for anyone attempting to change their life.
What's that?
What happens when we actually physically change our default setting? If your current default setting during passive time is consuming entertainment to escape the stress of reality, you are continually neurologically programming yourself for stagnation.
You're reinforcing the trap.
You are cementing the pathways of avoidance. But what if you shift that default setting to growing every day? Exactly as the text commands. What happens to your nervous system, your stress levels, and your sharpness when the voice in your ear during your morning commute isn't complaining about how terrible the world is, but is instead actively teaching you practical life strategies?
It changes the entire trajectory of your day before you even walk through the doors of your office. You arrive sharp instead of arriving defensive.
Exactly. Because in the realm of neuroscience, repetition is the mother of all skill, and it is also the mother of belief. The text repeats the concept of consistency relentlessly, 247, consistently, every day.
They hammer it home.
They do, because the authors of this program understand neuroplasticity even if they aren't using the clinical scientific terms for it.
Right, the brain changing itself.
Yes. The human brain is not a static organ. It physically rewires itself based on repeated exposure. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together.
Partner together, wire together.
If you consistently daily expose your mind to concepts of wisdom, discipline, emotional regulation, and purpose, your neural pathways physically adapt to support those concepts.
That becomes your new normal.
Exactly. They become your default response. You begin to automatically think differently, which means you begin to automatically act differently. The text is absolutely correct, biologically and psychologically, when it promises that this consistent shift in what you listen to is the literal starting point of transformation. You cannot outact a poorly programmed mind.
You cannot outact a poorly programmed mind. I want to put that on a billboard somewhere.
It's the truth.
That is the core truth right there. It all comes back to that central thesis. Your transformation starts with what you listen to consistently. It's not about going to one single weekend seminar, getting a massive spike of empty motivation, and then just going back to your old habits on Monday.
No, that never works.
It's not about finding one magic bullet idea that fixes your life instantly. It is about building an architecture of consistency. It is about protecting your mind from the relentless noise of the modern world and constantly, systematically feeding it with the raw materials of practical wisdom.
And we must recognize that this requires a conscious, daily, sometimes difficult choice.
It's not easy.
The text places the responsibility squarely on the individual. The Remedify Coaching Program exists as the ultimate tool. The curriculum is perfectly designed. The 360-degree ecosystem is mapped out. But the listener must be the one to actually press play.
You have to do the work.
You must choose to turn off the noise and turn on the wisdom.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today, but certainly not the end of the journey. In fact, if we've done our job right, this is really just the catalyst.
The journey is just beginning. And based strictly on the core thesis we've analyzed today from the Remedify Manifesto, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
The source tells us, definitively and without exception, that your transformation starts with what you listen to consistently. So I want you to be ruthlessly honest with yourself right now.
Take a real look.
Look back at your last 24 hours. Look at the audio you played in your car, the music you listened to at the gym, the conversations you engaged in, the media you allowed to run in the background of your mind. What exactly have you been programming your mind to become?
Wow.
Are you feeding the noise and the confusion, or are you finally ready to start feeding your purpose?
That is the ultimate question of the hour. You have to decide what your background process is going to be. And if you are ready to feed your purpose, if you are ready to step off that VR treadmill of empty motivation and actually start building practical wisdom, you know exactly what you need to do next.
Don't just sit there.
Right. Do not let this just be another dopamine hit. Take action. Visit the podcast series. Remedify Coaching Program for more exciting episodes. Check the episode description for more resources that can help you grow in your spirit, mind, and body.
It's about that consistent daily choice.
Yes. And crucially, step into a space of accountability and shared growth. Join our free school community. Your transformation starts with what you listen to consistently. Join 24-agers 7 days a week. Learn and grow.
Surrounding yourself with the right people.
Exactly. You can navigate there right now at https://www.school.com/Tyrannus-Hall-Bible-College/about. Check out our plans at https://www.school.com/Tyrannus-Hall-Bible-College/plans. Enjoy the podcast 24Hers 7 days a week by going to https://rss.com/podcasts/remedify-coaching-program-stay-freshes.
And there's the financial pillar, too.
Yes, if you want to actively engage that financial pillar we discussed, join our sales affiliate program, promote our products on Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms, earn a 25% commission, make some money today, take action on your financial health. The link is https://www.pnmoneymaking.com/affiliate-deck. Sign up. Thank you for visiting the Remedify Coaching Program. We trust your time was well spent with us today. Bye for now. Always remember, your health is your responsibility, and prevention is better than cure.